I think it goes without saying that finishing around the rim is an incredibly valuable skill to have, but it is one that I find a lot of players have trouble training, or at least getting better at over the course of time. Yet it's one of the most fun and creative skills that you can train if you do it the right way. So we're here in Athens, Greece, which is the reason for this kind of unique Airbnb setup here. But every time we do a camp like this, I get a lot of players asking me how they can improve their finishing, especially with contact and traffic and at high speeds. So I find myself giving this answer over and over and over again. I figured I might as well make a YouTube video about it, because over the course of the years, I've made a lot of videos about different techniques, how to finish with contact, all the kind of micro skills under it, but I've never really made a video, just one big video on how to train all of it. So that's what I'll do today. Now, in terms of training this, pretty similar to everything else that we train under kind of the by any means method. And in all of these, everything has 5 big components to training. Number 1, training the general skills behind it, which you guys will see. But these are things like touch and body control and different general skills that can come into play in a variety of situations. Number 2 is training specific situations and techniques with mini games. They're gonna help you read the defense better, adapt better to defenders and to situations, and have higher IQ. Number 3 is watching film to understand new creative ways to do things. Number 4 is being able to understand and train the psychology behind it. And number 5 is training to become a better mover, which is gonna show up in a lot of these things. So we'll go over each one of these. I'll give you a ton of examples on how to train these. And hopefully you can take this and use it as a blueprint or a roadmap as to how to train your finishing better. Let's get to it. So first off, again, our general skills. So I think the best way for me to explain this to you is just to give you a bunch of examples of skills that you need to become a good finisher at the rim, and showing you a bunch of examples of how to train these things. So first off, we'll start off with just general touch around the rim. This is being able to spin the ball anywhere you want to off the backboard. So using that entire backboard to get the ball to go in. This is being able to put the ball high up, right? So do you have the touch for that ball to go way up in the air and then end up landing in the basket? This includes touch on the move, right? A lot of the time we'll work on mic and drills and other stationary drills, which aren't bad, but they don't really mimic what we see a lot of the time in a game where we're coming in at high speed and we have to control our momentum and then find touch on the rim. This also includes touch at different extension angles, right? So can you extend out this way? Can you go across the body? Can you go underhand, overhand, behind you for a hook? All these different angles that you can extend with to, again, get the ball to go in the hoop. So touch in general is just being able to put the right amount of force on the ball and having a really good feel for how to get that ball to go in from a variety of different angles. And this is a general skill you can build with a ton of different drills. Second is gonna be body control. So this includes rotational body control, right? Can you rotate in the air or on the ground, maybe like a spin move, and do that not only with speed, but very precise control to get through small areas and stay control in the air. Secondly, do you have the body control to stay stable with contact or with outside perturbations from other people? Can you go up, take a bump, and finish, right? That requires body control from external forces. And we can go into the anti-lateral flexion and all these other things that this take on a more microscopic level. But a good general skill under this body control category is just, again, being able to resist other people's bumps. Another general category of body control is how fluidly you can move in the air. So in other words, can you shape your body in the air to find the perfect way to finish? Can you hang in the air for longer times? Can you stay stable as you jump in different directions? You know body control when you see it, especially in the air. And again, this is a very good general quality to train. Because again, if you improve a general quality, then a bunch of different types of finishes, a bunch of different types of situations will be improved, because it's a general thing that applies to a lot of different skills. Another good category is jumping ability. Of course, can you jump higher? That's always gonna help with finishing. But also, can you jump laterally, side to side? Can you jump forward or horizontally at a high speed? Can you get off the ground quickly? So not only how high you get, but how quickly you pop off the ground. Do you feel comfortable jumping from various 2-feet orientations? This is something that we work a lot on, because I never want my players to be constrained by, oh, I'm only a left-right jumper, and only in this position does it feel good for me to go up and jump for a finish. No, I want them to be able to go from left, left, when their feet are even, when they're super wide apart, go from the left, go from the right, jumping in all the different directions, because the more options that you have as a player, the easier it's gonna be for you to react to the defense and finish accordingly. And a lot of this jumping ability comes back to number 5, the 5th piece to what we're talking about in the method, is just becoming a better mover. the better mover you are, the easier it is for you to execute certain skills. And then the last general skill that we'll talk about in terms of finishing is adaptability. This is huge because finishing is such a close quarters, chaotic thing many times. So can you switch hands the last second? Can you finish on the way down? Can you find different release points to get outside of shot blockers? All of these things require you adapting to the defense and also just the situation at hand. And a lot of this is going to be built with more reactive or difficult drills, but also just through game situations, which we'll talk about next as part 2. So like I mentioned earlier, number 2 is going to be playing mini games to improve in certain situations, be able to read the defense better, and also being able to adapt to defenders. So in terms of different situations to train, we do a ton of different drills for these. I like giving players just a bunch of different looks in terms of finishing around the rim so they're ready for anything, but you can break this down in certain categories. First situation is a 1v1 with a defender on your hip or on your shoulder, right? So you have a bit of an advantage on them. Maybe you blow by them, maybe you get downhill off of a closeout, and now you're hip to hip or shoulder to shoulder. Like if he's on my hip, this has to be basically automatic for me to be able to finish. Sometimes you have help, of course, but if you want to play at a high level, if you're one-on-one with the defender and they're on your hip, it's got to be basically 90% of the time you're finishing, finding some way to score. From there, can you find a way to finish on that defender? That's situation number 1. Situation number 2 is an approach 1v1. So let's say you get past your initial defender, you get downhill, and now it's just you and another defender who you are now approaching, right? So it's in a situation like this where you're coming downhill, you have a shot blocker down there, and this is gonna call for completely different finishes. Number 3 is a 1v2 with both of these. So you have an initial defender who is roughly on your shoulder, and then you have another defender, a help defender who you're approaching. This is gonna require, once again, different situations where now you maybe have to find space a little bit better, and it calls for a completely different set of finishes. Now within this, you could also break this down more. So as a coach or as a trainer, I'm thinking, okay, sometimes I want this defender stepping over with high momentum. So maybe in that situation, they're getting into something like a Euro or a step through, different finishes that take advantage of momentum. Sometimes I want them backing up, sometimes I want them stationary, because again, all these different situations call for different finishes, and I want players being able to read these and get good in all of these situations. And then the last one I would say situationally is finishing at high speeds. So this is something like transition where you have a little bit more craziness going on. It's not like a set positioning. You're moving at a high speed, defenders are moving at a high speed. Are you able to finish from there? And for all of these, you want to train these in different areas as well. So let's say you're working on finishing with a defender on your hip, right? You go to the gym with one of your friends, one of your teammates, and you guys go back and forth with this. You don't only want to do this from the top of the key or from the wing, right? You want to switch it up because every different angle on the backboard, on the court, provides a different challenge. So sometimes you go deep in the corner, sometimes you go from the slot, and you mix it up here and there to make sure that you're getting used to all of these different angles. So now we cover the situations, and again, you can set up mini games to cover all of these different ones. Now I want to cover different techniques that you can create and use different games to focus on and also apply in all of these situations. So number 1 is pace, right? We've seen this a lot recently. I enjoy coaching this a ton. Being able to slow down with things like a quicksand finish where you really slow down, like you get stuck in quicksand right before you finish, your defender passes by. Like a full slow step here, so maybe your last 2 strides, one of them is super slow to again throw off the defender's timing. Just being able to switch up your pace and not always go fast is an amazing technique that you can use drills like this to work on. Another one is finding space. So this is something we actually worked in the camp. So being able to perceive the defense, find areas or pockets of space within those defenders, and then attack those creatively. Another one is going to be jumping different directions. So as you approach a defender, can you jump again laterally to extend out? Because if you're only able to jump up and down or forwards, it's going to take away a bunch of different options. So being unpredictable with the direction of your jump is huge. And then you got working through contact, which I can make, and I have actually made a ton of videos on, but I want to touch on this a bit more because there are a few really important concepts that you got to lock in on to become a good finisher through contact. First off, creating and resisting contact when you're still on the ground. Especially if you're a less athletic player, it's probably smarter to initiate this contact while you're still on the ground. And this takes being able to time up the bump well. This takes being able to do that without getting yourself off balance. So if a defender pulls the chair or you really bump them, can you stay on balance? This takes knowing the right time to do that. And of course, as we talk about all the time, you want to be the one to initiate it. But let's say a defender does bump you first. Can you resist that, stay on balance, and adapt to a situation where it may not be ideal for you because you got bumped? Then next, other times it will come down to you being in the air and being able to resist that contact. So this comes down to a lot of the general qualities that we talked about earlier. Body control, touch on the way down, a lot of general qualities that you can train if you are by yourself, but then also training mini games like this that are gonna help you just get reps with this. And then it comes down to psychology, which we'll talk about later. Then in terms of technique, you got all your different types of finishes, extensions, same foot finishes, Euros, and different stride finishes. All of these that you can study by just watching players, which is film, number 4, or find on social media, as plenty of trainers do a good job these days of throwing up a bunch of different finishes and different options that you have. And in terms of adding something like a certain finish to the toolbox, how I'll usually do this is a few simple steps. It's a pretty easy process. First off, you'll see something, right? So maybe like a little rondo finish, maybe a little extension. Once you see that, you decide that you want to work on it, and preferably you'll go and try this out in a live environment first. So maybe you're playing one-on-one against somebody. Maybe you set up a little mini game like this. Give it a shot. Now, sometimes you'll already kind of have the feel for it, and you can just stick with that live environment. Other times, it's going to be super awkward, and you need to take that out of a live environment, just get the coordination down like you see here, and then put it back into play. So again, it's seeing it, it's trying out with live defense. If you need to, just getting the coordination of it down, and then trying it out more with live defense and really sharpening it and trying it in a bunch of different ways. And like I mentioned, this is where number 4, film, comes into play. I want you guys to continue to feed your toolbox so you have a bunch of different options that you can use. If you're constantly supplying your mind with different finishes because you're watching the Kyrie Irvings of the world, the other great finishers who are out there, you have so many different options to use because you've seen these things, and now consciously or subconsciously, you can go to the court and work on it. So keep watching film, keep watching, whether they're my videos, somebody else who does a great job, full games, highlights, whatever it is, continue to feed your mind basketball. And then lastly, before I get into a really brief overview of how to structure these things, is the psychology behind it. There's a lot that I could cover here, but I'll go over 3 main qualities. Number 1 being aggression. So that's not being scared to get hit or create contact sometimes. That's not being scared to get blocked. That's being able to go into the paint without worrying about failure, without worrying about, again, physicality, and just trying stuff out. Because over time, you will get blocked, you will get knocked down sometimes. It's basketball, but through that process, you'll get better. But if you don't have that aggression and that willingness, then you'll never get there. Number 2 is going to be focus, right? Are you able to maintain focus on the rim, on space, even through a very chaotic environment that is finishing and going down there with the trees? And something like focus is super difficult to build without actually putting yourself in these situations. Once again, playing these mini games. So the more chaotic you can train, the better you can improve this focus, and the better you get in a real game when you have 3 defenders in the paint. And then lastly is composure. This is kind of a skill, kind of a mindset thing, but a lot of this is just not always going full speed, right? It's how much can you slow down, use your pace, use a more calm mindset to finish more strategically rather than just going fast to the rim every single time and trying to beat people with aggression. So now it's about finding that balance between the aggression and the composure. So this just goes to show you how in every skill, ball handling, finishing, shooting, all of these also have these psychological factors that we got to train as well. Now, the last thing that I'll cover is, out of all these different things, the general skills, the mini games to train all these techniques, watching film, the psychology, becoming a better mover, how do you structure all this? So I'll just say this to make it pretty simple for you. When you're in the gym or you're out on a court by yourself, usually it's best to go with working on these general qualities. And how you do that? Well, you identify ones that you're weak at, and you either use or create different drills. And mind you, it doesn't have to be the perfect drill, but you use these things to challenge you. And I want to make sure that when you're by yourself training these general skills with drills like this, that you're not making 7, 8, 9, 10 out of 10 layups. Because if you do that, your training is too easy. We need challenge to improve. And if you're shooting that high of a percentage, that's not enough challenge. So that's not to say that you're missing on purpose, of course, but that's saying that you're putting yourself in situations with these more difficult drills to where now maybe you're making 3 or 4 out of 10, and that's a challenge. And then eventually you work your way up, so that drill or that level of the drill, you're making 6 out of 10 now, and then 7, and you're like, okay, let me add something to this. So you jump further away, you add a different progression to it, or you just move on to a different drill. So if you're able to conquer all these mini challenges when you're in the gym by yourself, to start training these general skills, body control, touch, etc., that's how you're gonna get better when you're by yourself. Now, also, you're gonna need to find a few people to train with, or maybe just one person. Preferably you have a group of people who you can play with, have a help defender, have an initial defender, but set up mini games like this, which again, don't have to be perfect, but get a ton of reps in different situations, training the qualities, the situations, the techniques that you feel like you need most, and just get a ton of reps doing this on defense and doing this in challenging situations. Then outside of that, watch film, like I mentioned earlier, don't need to repeat that. In terms of the psychology, be mindful of the psychological components of it. So when you're playing against your friends, be willing to work on your aggression and the composure and the focus. And then lastly, in terms of becoming a better mover, understand that sometimes if you're doing weird drills like this, it's not for the sake of being able to do a 360 in a game, but more so building more adaptability, building more body control, and through that you're moving better and it's able for you to execute these skills. Also, stay in the weight room, get bouncier, be able to pop off the ground quicker, get stronger, all that goes into becoming a better mover. So I know this is a lot of information, but I wanted to supply you guys with basically everything that you'll need to become a better finisher. You can take what you want, certain drills, ideas, techniques, and leave what you don't want. But if you really want to maximize your success around the rim, these are the 5 big components. Hopefully this made sense for you guys. As always, thank you so much for tuning in. I'll see you next time.